Jungkook was furious with Jimin, but Jimin's secret actions behind the scenes left him speechless and changed everything between them forever. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? Jungkook's voice cracked through the silence like glass breaking. The photo frame hit the floor before Jimin could answer, its wooden edges splintering as a thin film of dust jumped into the stale air between them. For a second, neither of them moved. The sound of the frame breaking seemed louder than it should have been, as if it tore through something deeper than wood and glass. Jimin stood still, barefoot on the wooden floor, lips parted but empty of words. His hands trembled at his sides, not because of fear he wasn't afraid of Jungkook, but because everything inside him was clawing to say something, to explain, to fix it. But where would he even begin? Outside the rehearsal room, rain tapped on the windows like an impatient knock, and somewhere deep inside the building, a bass drum echoed faintly remnants of a practice session that ended hours ago. They had been alone for a while now. Too long. Jungkook's eyes were dark, bloodshot, not from lack of sleep, but from holding back tears for too long. His hoodie was damp at the collar, his fists clenched so hard the veins on his arms looked like tree roots beneath his skin. You deleted the message. Jungkook's voice was lower now, quieter, but even colder. I waited all night, Jimin, all night. I know, Jimin finally said, voice soft, almost childlike. I didn't want to make it worse. You didn't want to make it worse? Jungkook took one step forward. You made it invisible. I didn't want you to see me like that. That's not your choice to make. Jimin's eyes fell to the shards of the photo frame. It had held the three of them, Jimin, Jungkook, and Taehyung, at their debut anniversary, smiling like nothing in the world could ever change them. But now that same picture lay cracked, one long fracture slicing right through the middle, dividing Jungkook from the rest. But what Jungkook didn't know, what no one knew, was that Jimin had been doing something every night since that fight. Something quiet, something he didn't want praise for, something that hurt. Each night, after the lights went out in the dorm, Jimin would return to the studio alone. No producers, no stylists, just him, the piano, and an unfinished melody he refused to show anyone. A song he was writing for Jungkook. Because if words wouldn't work, maybe music would. The night Jungkook found out wasn't through a confession. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation or a desperate apology. It was an accident. Jungkook had stormed into the practice building looking for his phone charger. The main hallway was empty, lights dimmed, the air heavy with humidity from the rainstorm outside. As he passed the closed studio door, he heard it, a note, then another. Then a verse sung so softly it barely made a dent in the silence. He paused. It wasn't just any song. It was his story. Jungkook's feet moved before his brain gave permission. He pushed open the door. There was Jimin, seated at the upright piano, hoodie pushed up to his elbows, eyes closed, fingers trembling as they played. He was mouthing lyrics under his breath, unaware he had an audience. The lyrics hit Jungkook like fists to the chest. I know I broke the trust we built from boys to brothers. But I'm still here, in every word I write in the dark. Even if your silence is louder than any scream I deserve. Jungkook didn't know how long he stood there, but when Jimin finally turned and saw him, he froze. Jungkook's anger had vanished. Not milde, not sofne, vanished. He didn't say a word. He walked to the piano, and without breaking eye contact, he sat beside Jimin and added his own harmony. They played in silence for minutes that felt like years. The studio, with its cheap walls and flickering LED lights, had never felt so sacred. Jungkook didn't ask questions. He didn't bring up the message again. He didn't need to. Because in that moment, through that melody, he understood what Jimin had done. Not for the world, not for the fans, not for redemption, but for him. And that broke him more than any betrayal could. When they finished the song, Jimin turned his head. I didn't think you'd want to hear it. I didn't, Jungkook whispered, but I needed to. Then he leaned his forehead against Jimin's shoulder, breathing slow, shallow. Next time, Jungkook said, voice nearly inaudible. Don't hide when you're hurting too. Jimin closed his eyes, holding back everything that wanted to spill out. All the apologies, all the nights spent rewriting the same line just to get it right, all the fears that maybe he was already too late. Okay, Jimin said. But both of them knew this was just the beginning. I wasn't supposed to be there. Jungkook's voice broke through the tension like a sudden flame in a dark room. His back was to the window, the twilight outside streaking shadows across his jaw. The air between him and Jimin was heavy so thick it could have drowned them both if either dared to speak the wrong word. Jimin sat across from him in the dorm's small living room, the old leather couch creaking beneath him as he shifted. His hands were locked together, thumbs nervously rubbing one another. There was a bruise forming on his soul, and he didn't even know where to place the ice. You weren't supposed to hear it? Jimin asked finally, barely louder than a breath. No, Jungkook replied, eyes unmoving. I wasn't supposed to be there. That night, at the studio. Jimin looked down. I know, but I was, and I heard everything, and now I don't know what to do with that. Then don't do anything, Jimin said, voice cracking. Let it stay there. Let it disappear like it never happened, like the way we always. No, Jungkook cut him off, firm and shaking. Don't do that. Don't act like you wrote that for some ghost. That wasn't for ARMY. That wasn't for music. That was for me, wasn't it? Jimin swallowed hard. Yes. And you weren't going to tell me? I couldn't. Why? Jungkook's voice rose now, fierce, wounded, desperate. Because I was mad at you? Because I walked out when you needed me? Jimin stood up abruptly. Because you hated me, Jungkook. Silence fell like a slap. Jungkook blinked slowly. Is that what you think? You didn't say a word to me for 3 weeks. You walked past me like I didn't exist. You avoided eye contact on stage. You skipped dinners. You stopped replying in the group chat. What else was I supposed to think? That I was hurting, Jungkook hissed. That I was trying to survive the silence you left behind. Jimin opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was something about Jungkook's tone raw, like an open wound being exposed to salt. For the first time, he realized that maybe Jungkook hadn't been cold. Maybe he'd just been breaking. I'm sorry, Jimin whispered. Jungkook shook his head slowly. Sorry doesn't fix it, Hyung. Jimin flinched. Hyung. It hit differently this time, like distance instead of familiarity, like Jungkook was drawing a line between them, daring him to try crossing it. Jungkook took a deep breath, ran a hand through his hair, and turned toward the window. Lights from the city twinkled below like false stars. Do you want to know what I was doing while you were writing that song? Jimin nodded, his voice refusing to work. I was drinking, Jungkook muttered, almost ashamed. At Namjoon's place, alone, every night, because I couldn't stand being in this dorm. I couldn't sleep in the same room where you laughed with me. Where you used to play those stupid prank videos before bed. I couldn't even look at the shelf where we kept your birthday letters to me. I kept replaying the argument over and over in my head, your voice. The way you looked at me like I was a stranger. Jimin felt something inside him sink. I didn't know. No, you didn't. Jungkook turned to face him again. Because you didn't ask. You disappeared into that studio and closed the door behind you. I was trying to make it up to you, Jimin said, biting his lip. Without words! I thought maybe if I wrote a song that told you everything I couldn't say out loud, it would reach you. Well, it did, Jungkook said, stepping closer. And now I don't know whether to forgive you or fall in love with you all over again. The room froze. Jimin's breath hitched. Jungkook blinked as if he had just realized what he said. The sentence hung in the air between them, defiant and irreversible. What did you just… I didn't mean to say that, Jungkook said quickly, retreating. That wasn't what I meant. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I did. Maybe I do. I just… Stop. Jimin raised a hand, eyes wide with something unreadable. You can't just drop that and act like it didn't just change the air in this room. I know. Jimin walked slowly toward him, the couch now behind him, the space between them almost gone. Jungkook? Is that why you were so angry with me? Jungkook's mouth opened, closed, opened again, Partly, I think. I don't know, maybe. Because it wasn't just about the fight, was it? Jungkook didn't reply. His silence was an answer. Jimin reached out, fingers brushing Jungkook's wrist. Jungkook didn't move. I wasn't just writing that song to apologize, Jimin said, voice trembling. I was writing it because I miss the version of us that wasn't afraid to feel. I was writing it because part of me still loves the way you bite your lip when you're nervous. The way you defend people who don't even deserve your kindness. The way you hold your breath when you're hurt so no one else has to hear it. Jungkook's eyes were glistening now. And I wrote it, Jimin said, voice cracking, because I knew if I said all that to your face, you'd walk away again. I wouldn't have, Jungkook said. You did. That's because I was scared. So was I. They stood there, raw and exposed, everything between them trembling like a string about to snap. It wasn't love in the way songs described it. It was messier, louder, angrier, softer. Then, suddenly, Jungkook turned and walked away. Jimin felt a lump rise in his throat, panic threading through his chest. But Jungkook didn't leave. He returned moments later with something in his hand. A worn notebook, the one Jimin had seen him scribbling in during long car rides and airport lounges. Jungkook handed it over. I wasn't going to show you this, but I think it's time. Jimin opened it slowly. Page after page lyrics, chords, fragments of thoughts, and then a title written in the corner in black ink. If you were still mine. Jimin's eyes blurred as he flipped through the lines. I watched you build a wall from paper songs and broken chords. I climbed every note just to reach the silence between us. But you were always out of reach, just one verse ahead. This was about me? Jimin whispered. Jungkook nodded. Started it the night you left for Busan without saying goodbye. Finished it the night I heard you sing. Jimin clutched the notebook to his chest. Maybe we both broke things we can't fix, Jungkook said softly. But maybe this song yours and mine, maybe it's what we needed to start again. Jimin looked up. What if we still mess it up? Then we'll write another one. They didn't hug. They didn't cry. They just sat side by side in silence, letting the weight of their secrets spill into the space between them like ink on a page. Because sometimes, the deepest forgiveness doesn't come from words. It comes from music. And two broken voices daring to sing together again. Jungkook slammed the door to his room, but the echo didn't bring the satisfaction he hoped for. Instead, it sounded like regret bouncing off the walls, multiplying, circling back to choke him. His chest rose and fell with breathless fury, heart racing not because of what was said, but because of what was left unsaid. In the living room, Jimin remained motionless. His phone rested on the edge of the coffee table, vibrating once. A text from Taehyung. He didn't bother to look. Everything had unraveled again. It had started with a laugh. Just a laugh. Jimin, during an interview taping, had mentioned how someone used to write him songs at 3 a.m. He hadn't said Jungkook's name. But the look in his eyes, the way he looked was too revealing. Twitter erupted, armies speculated, hashtags exploded, and the moment Jungkook saw the clip while scrolling in the dressing room, something inside him snapped. You used me to look poetic, Jungkook spat at Jimin minutes after arriving at the dorm. I didn't even say your name, Jimin argued back, voice pitched high with disbelief. You didn't need to. Everyone knew. You left the crumbs and let them build their own drama. And now they're using me as some tragic footnote in your narrative. Jimin stood frozen, breath heavy. You really think I'd use you? That I'd manipulate our pain for? For what? Relevance? You tell me. You've been good at hiding behind lyrics lately. Jimin opened his mouth, but the words didn't come. Because in that moment, Jungkook wasn't wrong. Not entirely. He had spoken about Jungkook, maybe not in name, but through every word, every glance, every lyric dripping in unsaid confessions, because he didn't know how else to let it out. And maybe part of him did want the world to know, not for fame, not for pity, but because silence was a poison that had already eroded too much. Still, the hurt in Jungkook's eyes. It was deeper than misunderstanding. It was betrayal. Jimin followed Jungkook down the hallway. The door was locked. He could hear the muffled sound of something crashing a drawer, maybe. A chair, a bottle. "Jungkook?" he called softly. No answer. "Open the door." Silence. "I didn't mean for it to get out like that." "Nothing. I miss you." The lock clicked. Jimin opened the door slowly. Jungkook sat on the floor, back against the bed frame, a shoebox on his lap, and papers scattered around him. His eyes were red, but dry. "What is this?" Jimin asked. Jungkook didn't look up. "The drawer I kept locked for months. The one I swore I'd never open again." Jimin stepped inside. The air was different dense, with memories, laced with sweat, salt, and old incense. He kneeled next to Jungkook, watching him shuffle through pages of lyrics, old Polaroids, notes folded in half. Jimin reached out, lifting one small piece of lined paper. It was his own handwriting. "You were never supposed to find this," he gasped. Jungkook chuckled, humorless. "I found it when I was cleaning last winter. You slipped it inside the black hoodie I used to wear to the airport." Jimin's mouth opened, but he couldn't speak. That letter. That was the one he wrote after their first big fight, before they ever admitted feelings, back when everything was still trembling in uncertainty. "You said you burned it," Jimin whispered. "I lied. I couldn't." Jungkook stared at the letter for a long time before speaking again. "I read it every night for 2 weeks, every single night, trying to convince myself it meant more than it said, trying to believe you wrote it because you loved me." "I did," Jimin replied instantly. "I still do." Jungkook finally turned to look at him. "Then why do I feel like I've been loving you alone?" That question didn't just pierce it shattered. "I thought you didn't want this anymore," Jimin said. "After the fight, after the silence, I thought you were pulling away." "I wasn't pulling away," Jungkook hissed. "I was waiting for you to stop pretending everything was fine, waiting for you to knock on my door and ask, waiting for something real." Jimin closed his eyes. "I didn't think I had the right anymore." Jungkook leaned forward suddenly, too close, eyes blazing. "Do you even know what it did to me watching you pretend on stage? Smiling like nothing was wrong? Standing next to me like we were strangers? Talking to Taehyung more than you ever talked to me?" "That wasn't about you." "Everything is about you." The words echoed off the walls, louder than anything they'd said before. Jungkook stood and began pacing. "You know what's funny? The night I walked into the studio and heard your song, I hated you. I hated that you knew exactly what to say when I wasn't there. I hated that your voice could still ruin me in one verse. I hated that I loved every second of it." Jimin stood too. "Then why did you sing with me?" "Because I wanted to feel close to you again, even if it wasn't real." The silence that followed was seismic. Then Jungkook's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His face paled. "What is it?" Jimin asked. Jungkook held it up. A video. Leaked. Their studio session. That one. The one where Jungkook had harmonized with Jimin in the dark, unknowingly being recorded by a stray rehearsal camera. The caption read, "Taekook or Jikook. This changes everything." Jimin's heart dropped. Jungkook's jaw clenched. "They think this is about shipping wars." "They always do." "This was supposed to be ours." Jimin swallowed hard. "We'll fix it." "How? How do you fix something when the whole world already made up their mind about what it means?" "You don't. You just hold on to what you know it meant." Jungkook looked at him, really looked. "What if we're not strong enough?" Jimin stepped forward. "Then let's fall apart together. At least that way, we're not alone anymore." For the first time, Jungkook didn't flinch when Jimin reached for him. He let the touch linger. He let it matter. They spent the night in that room, talking. Not like idols, not like friends, but like broken halves of something real. Jimin told Jungkook about the night he almost quit. The day he stood on the roof of the studio building, wind ripping through his jacket, wondering if anyone would miss him if he vanished. Jungkook told Jimin about the therapist he saw in secret, the one who told him that silence isn't healing, it's avoidance dressed in shame. They told each other everything. No metaphors, no melody, Just truth. And somewhere between sunrise and exhaustion, Jimin whispered something he hadn't said in years. I don't want to write about you anymore, Jungkook. I want to write with you. Jungkook's voice cracked. Then let's start today. So they did. Not with a perfect song. Not with a public announcement. But with a single note held between them. Raw. Wounded. And unbreakably real. The knock at the door came at 3:17 a.m. Soft. Hesitant. Once. Then twice. Then silence. Jimin sat up instantly, sleep still tangled in his lashes, heart pounding with something that felt like dread. The dorm was silent, dark, except for the faint glow of the hallway light spilling under his door. He knew it was Jungkook. He always knew. Slipping out of bed, he padded barefoot across the cold floor and opened the door, expecting to see him. But the hallway was empty. Only a folded note sat on the floor, stark white against the wooden tiles. No envelope, no name, just a single line scribbled across the front. I needed to disappear. Don't look for me. Jimin froze. The air in his lungs vanished. His fingers trembled as he opened it fully. Inside, nothing else. No signature, no explanation. Just nothing. Panic struck fast. Too fast. He ran to Jungkook's room. The door was unlocked, the bed untouched, the window slightly open, letting in the night wind that bit at his bare arms. A quick glance confirmed it. All the closet was empty. No backpack, no passport, nothing on the desk. Gone. Jimin's mind spiraled before his feet could move. He called him once, no answer. Again, straight to voicemail. The pain that followed wasn't like before. This wasn't a fight. This wasn't silent tension. This wasn't miscommunication or bruised pride. This was Jungkook, gone. Disappeared. No warning, no goodbye. The next morning was a blur. Hybe was called. Managers were panicking. Staff whispered in corners. None of the members had heard anything. Taehyung tried to stay calm, but Jimin could see it, the way his jaw clenched tighter than usual, the way he refused to sit down, the way he kept looking toward the front door like maybe, just maybe, Jungkook would come back and this would all be some dramatic misunderstanding. But it wasn't. Security footage showed Jungkook leaving the building alone around 1:40 a.m., hoodie up, mask on, with only a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. No one knew where he went. And the worst part? No one knew why. Jimin hadn't slept for 2 nights. He barely ate. Every phone buzz made his stomach drop. Every call that wasn't from Jungkook left him emptier than the last. Until the 3rd day. He received a package. No sender. Inside, a flash drive and a note. Play it alone. Jimin locked himself in the studio, inserted the drive into the old computer, and hit play. Black screen. Then a voice. Jungkook's. I didn't run away from you, the voice said. I ran away from who I was becoming. Silence. Then the screen flickered on. A grainy video Jungkook, sitting on the floor of a dimly lit room, the same blue hoodie he wore the night he left. I know you're probably panicking. I know I should have said something, but if I did, I would have stayed, and I couldn't. His voice cracked on the last word. I kept saying I was healing, that writing songs with you again made me feel whole, but the truth is, I was suffocating, because I wasn't healing. I was pretending, for you, for the fans, for everyone. Jimin's breath caught. I needed space to feel without the cameras, without the lights, without people telling me who I'm supposed to be. I needed to scream without turning it into lyrics. I needed to cry without being beautiful about it. The video paused. Jungkook wiped at his eyes. I know you're angry. I know you're hurting. But Jimin, I couldn't ask for your permission to break. Jimin covered his mouth with his hand, trying to hold back the sob building in his throat. You once said we fall apart better than we stay together. Maybe that's true, or maybe we've been too scared to fall forward. He looked directly at the camera. I'm not giving up on you. I'm just finally choosing me. And if I'm still someone worth loving when I come back, maybe we'll figure it out. The screen went black. Jimin sat there for hours after the video ended. Then he stood. And he destroyed the studio. He threw the chair across the room, he kicked the speakers, he punched the wall until his knuckles bled. Because how dare Jungkook say he wasn't giving up after leaving? How dare he pour his heart into a video instead of into a conversation? How dare he disappear and still ask to be loved? How dare he make Jimin feel like this? When the others arrived, Jimin was curled on the floor, fists raw, tears dried into salt on his cheeks. Taehyung didn't ask questions. He just sat down beside him and whispered, "We'll find him." But Jimin shook his head. "No," he said hoarsely, "he doesn't want to be found." Taehyung looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. Because he knew. Weeks passed. Rumors spread like wildfire. Jungkook and Jimin break up? BTS hiatus confirmed? Secret relationship scandal? Photos surfaced. Old ones. The media dug up every lingering glance, every backstage interaction, every lyric ever written and dissected it like gospel. Jimin couldn't leave the building without being swarmed. He couldn't blink without speculation. Hybe issued statements. Personal time. Creative exploration. No internal conflict. Lies. All of it. The truth was far less poetic. Jungkook was gone, and Jimin didn't know if he was ever coming back. One night, alone in the dance studio, Jimin stood in front of the mirror, shirt soaked with sweat, body aching from hours of pushing himself too hard. He stared at his reflection. The dark circles, the hollowed cheeks, the sadness he couldn't shake. Then he whispered, "You're not the only one who's broken." The next day, he booked a ticket. No schedule, no media. He disappeared too. No one knew where he went. Until, weeks later, on a stormy night in a small coastal village in Japan, two figures were spotted walking silently along the beach. No words, just wind, waves, and distance. Jimin had found him. Jungkook didn't speak at first. He just stared. But Jimin did. "I hated you for leaving." "I know. I thought I forgave you when I watched that video. I didn't deserve forgiveness." "No," Jimin said, "but I gave it anyway." The silence between them was vast, but not empty. Then Jungkook finally said, "Are you here to take me home?" Jimin shook his head. "I'm here to ask if you still want to write that second verse." Jungkook looked away toward the ocean. Then, slowly, he nodded. And that was enough. Not to fix everything, but to begin again. From the truth, from the pain, from the place where love had always been hiding. Not behind lyrics. Not behind performances. But between the cracks they once tried to bury. And now they were ready to sing together. The hotel room smelled like ocean air and stale coffee. It wasn't glamorous, just quiet. Quiet enough to hear the echo of everything left unspoken between them. Jungkook sat on the edge of the bed, elbows on knees, staring at the floor like it might offer answers. Jimin stood by the window, arms folded tightly, his face half lit by the moonlight sneaking in through the sheer curtains. The sound of waves crashing outside served as a constant reminder that they were far from Seoul, far from the cameras, far from everything they had built and everything they had broken. "So," Jungkook finally said, voice low and brittle, "what now?" Jimin didn't turn around. "That's what I came to ask you." Jungkook exhaled, the kind of exhale that carries weeks of unslept nights and guilt buried deep in the chest. "I didn't think you'd actually come." "You left me no choice," Jimin said sharply. "I didn't know if you were alive, Jungkook. You vanished." "I sent a message." "You left a note." Jungkook didn't respond. His fingers dug into the sides of the mattress as if to anchor himself to something real. Jimin turned then, slowly, his gaze cutting through the room like a blade. "I didn't know how to breathe without you. Do you understand that? I would walk past your room and feel like I was walking through a graveyard. Every place I looked, you were everywhere and nowhere." Jungkook's jaw clenched, but he didn't lift his eyes. "I thought if I disappeared," he muttered, "I could figure out who I was without all of this, without the noise, without the pressure to be half of someone." Jimin took a step forward, his voice now trembling. "And did you?" No, Jungkook said bitterly. I just figured out how much of me was already you. That stunned Jimin into silence. The space between them had always been filled with rhythm, music, movement. But now it throbbed with something heavier truth. Jungkook stood slowly and walked to the table by the window. He opened his notebook and slid it across the surface toward Jimin. Read it. Jimin opened the pages. Handwritten lyrics, some crossed out, some underlined, some smeared with ink. But the ones that stood untouched hit the hardest. You said I was your home, but homes don't run away. You sang about light, but I lived in your shadow. I needed saving, but all you offered was silence. Jimin's throat tightened. These were all for me? Jungkook didn't answer directly. Every line I wrote out there was for the version of you I missed. Not the one that stood on stage, not the one who smiled for the press. The one who sat with me at 2 a.m., whispering secrets under the covers like we were the only two people who knew the truth. I didn't know how to be that person anymore, Jimin whispered. Everything got so loud, the fans, the rumors, the pressure. I felt like if I showed how much you meant to me, they'd ruin it, pick it apart, turn us into a storyline they could argue over. You let them steal what we never gave them, Jungkook said. You let them decide what we were. You think I didn't fight for us? Jimin snapped. I fought every day. I defended you when people said you were cold. I deflected every question that cornered us. I bled into every lyric just to keep your name sacred. Then why did it feel like you were ashamed of me? That silenced everything. Even the waves outside seemed to hush. I wasn't ashamed, Jimin said, his voice breaking. I was scared. Scared that if I loved you too loudly, I'd lose you. You lost me anyway. Jimin closed his eyes. His hands clenched at his sides. I should have said something that night. The night I watched your interview and realized you were spiraling. You watched that? Of course I did. You kept tugging your sleeve, biting your lip like you do when you're about to cry. But you didn't cry. You smiled and lied through your teeth. Jungkook's voice was bitter. Just like you. That was too much. Jimin crossed the room in 3 steps and shoved the notebook off the table, the pages scattering to the floor. You want the truth? He shouted. Fine, you were the only thing keeping me sane, but you were also the only person who could destroy me. Every time you pulled away, I felt like I was suffocating. And I hated that I let someone have that kind of power over me. Jungkook stared at him, silent, breathless. I loved you, Jimin whispered. But I didn't know how to do it without losing myself. And I loved you, Jungkook said, but I didn't know how to do it without drowning in you. There it was, the thing they both had known for years, but never dared to name. The love that didn't look like songs and fan edits, the love that was sharp and raw and ugly. A love that wasn't gentle but real. They stood there, breathing heavily, eyes wet and shining in the silver blue light. Do you regret it? Jimin asked. Jungkook's voice was hoarse. Every part of it that ended like this. And the rest? He stepped forward. The rest is the only thing that ever felt real. Jimin's lips parted, but no words came. Instead, he reached out. Their hands met in the middle, hesitant, trembling, but firm. Jungkook closed the distance and rested his forehead against Jimin's. I don't know how to start over, he murmured. Then let's not, Jimin said. Let's just continue from here. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything they hadn't said, everything they finally could. That night, they didn't kiss. They didn't touch beyond fingers and foreheads. They just existed, side by side. Awake until dawn, hearts still beating in sync, even after all the silence, all the storms. By morning, the ocean was calm. And so were they. But the world wasn't. Because back in Seoul, someone had leaked a photo. A blurry image. 2 silhouettes walking along the beach. One taller, one slightly ahead, fingers brushing. The caption read, Reunited or resurfaced scandal. By noon, it was trending globally. By evening, fans were divided. Theories, protests, support, outrage. Hybe called. Neither of them answered. Instead, Jimin posted something to his story, Black background, white text. Some things don't need to be explained, just respected. Jungkook reposted it. No further comment. That night, they sat in the sand, scrolling through the madness, shoulders touching. We'll lose people, Jimin said quietly. We already have, Jungkook replied. Do you think we'll survive this? Jungkook turned to him. We've already survived each other. And that was the truth they had never dared to speak. Until now.